This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. On the day Rocky got engaged to his fiancée, I was serving as a waitress in the banquet hall. The guests I served happened to be our former college classmates. Rocky glanced at me indifferently, as if I were a stranger. Someone recognized me and immediately lashed out on Rocky's behalf. "Hailey, how dare you show up here? 5 years ago today, Rocky got into a car accident searching for you and almost died. And what were you doing back then?" My heart quivered. 5 years ago, on that very day, I was in a rented room, giving birth in distress, barely surviving myself. "I'm sorry." I quickly placed the plate on the table and handed over a napkin. "It's fine, no problem," the woman said gently, then turned surprised. "Hailey, is it really you? How could you?" As my name left her lips, everyone's eyes landed on me. Shocked, angry, disdainful, amused. But one gaze, mixed with icy coldness, burned so hot when it fell on me that it felt like it would sear holes in my face. It was Rocky. "Is it really you, Hailey?" Rocky's friend Tony, who was also my high school classmate, approached with a disdainful look, sizing me up. "You're here serving dishes? Ha! How did you end up like this?" Others snickered. Some even laughed outright. I could feel that heated gaze grow even more intense. I ignored Tony's mockery, but Tony wouldn't let it go. "Not only are you bad at this job, Hailey, but you've also dirtied the guests' clothes. Do you know how much Serena's dress costs?" "It's fine," Serena intervened, trying to mediate. "Tony, stop it. It's just a dress. I have plenty of spares upstairs. I'll just change into another one." I looked at Serena calmly. If she hadn't bumped into me just now, my hand wouldn't have trembled, and her dress wouldn't have gotten dirty. "Still," I said, "go change. I'll send it for dry cleaning." Tony sneered. "Dry cleaning? This is a custom dress. The cost of cleaning it alone is more than your 3 months' salary combined." He had always been a chatterbox. Serena smiled gently. "Enough, Tony. Hailey is our classmate. How could I ask her to pay? Sit down, please." She then grabbed my arm, smiling. "Hailey, why don't you sit with us and have a bite?" "No, thank you. I still have work to do." I paused, then added, "Congratulations." Serena was about to say more when a cold voice interrupted. "She is not one of our guests." Rocky said this. The implication was clear. He didn't want me at the table. It suited me just fine. Under everyone's gaze, I picked up the plate from earlier. "Excuse me, I'll get a replacement dish." With that, I walked away. Behind me, Tony's mocking voice rang out again. "She's a waitress now, and she's still putting on airs? Are you okay?" someone asked him. Rocky gave a cold laugh. "Why wouldn't I be?" His tone was frosty, indifferent. I returned with a new dish, set it on the table, and saw Serena serving Rocky food. "Rocky, have something to eat. We still have to toast the guests later." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Rocky accept Serena's offering, but he didn't move his head at all, still staring at me. I calmly averted my gaze. That prickling feeling on my back returned. I didn't need to look to know it was from Rocky. As dishes came and went, the last plate was served, and I prepared to clock out. Tony suddenly stood up. It was as if he had been suppressing something all along. Earlier, he had only managed a few sarcastic remarks to vent his frustration. Now, it all erupted. "Hailey, who the hell do you think you are, acting all high and mighty?" I looked at him. His face was flushed, his eyes burning with rage. "How dare you show up here? 5 years ago today, Rocky nearly died in a car accident looking for you. And what were you doing back then?" At the engagement banquet, all eyes turned to us again. My heart trembled. 5 years ago today, I was in a rented room, giving birth, and barely survived myself. I ignored everyone and went straight to my manager to clock out. Back home, as soon as I opened the door, a small pink bundle rushed into my arms. "Mommy." The blockage in my heart instantly dissolved. I squatted down and hugged the little one tightly. "Baby, let mommy hold you a little longer." My mom chuckled. "You're such a grown-up, still clinging to your daughter like this." "Then I'll cling to you instead," I said, standing up and taking Alice's small hand. "Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about something." Sitting on the sofa, I pulled Alice into my lap. "Mom, you should stop working at the hotel. You need to take care of Alice. When you don't have time, I have to fill in for you. And my law firm has so much pending work." My mom nodded. All right, whatever you say." She smiled, pinching Alice's cheek. "From now on, I'll do nothing but keep my precious granddaughter company." Alice clapped her hands. "That's great. Alice, it's time for bed," I said, setting her down. "Go on." Alice pouted. "But my birthday is tomorrow. Can't I stay up a little longer?" I gave her a warm smile and then firmly told her, "That's tomorrow, not today." My mom tapped me on the arm. "Do you have to be so strict?" "How is this strict?" I stood up. "I still have work to do. You both should get to bed early." The study was piled high with case files waiting for me. Recently, I had taken on several wage recovery cases. These corporate bosses had plenty of money but resorted to wage theft and underhanded tactics. It was past 1 a.m. when I finally left the study. My mom and Alice had long fallen asleep. After washing up, I lay in bed, yet sleep eluded me. Closing my eyes, I found my thoughts drifting to Rockey. I met Rockey in our second year of high school. That was the darkest year of my life. My dad got sick and needed a large sum for treatment. Just when my dad's factory owed him a bonus, enough to cover his medical expenses, his apprentice took the money to the hospital, but the amount was halved. When I asked what happened, my dad's apprentice said he didn't know, and that it was Sam, the boss, who had asked him to deliver the money. He was just the runner. My mom then went to see Sam, but he told her the factory policy was the issue, and the money was what the higher-ups had approved. From then on, my mom went to the factory daily to demand the money. I could visibly see her losing weight during that time, and every time I watched her frail figure leave for the factory, my heart ached. That year, I was 17. I wanted to take the weight of the family on my shoulders. So, after my mom failed to get the money again, I went to the factory alone, while she stayed at the hospital to care for my dad. I happened to catch the factory leaders on an inspection visit. I caused a scene, and the leader's face showed clear disgust. He walked up to me, looking down, and said, "You must be Bame's daughter?" I nodded, and he continued, "He's indeed a contributor to the factory." So when I heard he was in the hospital, I immediately approved the bonus meant for the end of the year. Both the factory and I have done our best for him. After he spoke, he didn't look at me again and continued his inspection. I thought he was my last hope, so I begged him, "Please, I really need this money. My dad's condition can't be delayed. The bonus amount is wrong." "Young lady, you can't just say things like that," Sam, the boss, interrupted coldly. "We keep books. Everything is clear and precise. How can you say it's wrong?" The leader sneered, "How old are you, and you're already trying to extort people? Get lost." Sam, in an even more condescending tone, added, "You're just trying to take advantage of this to get more money. Poor kids are always scheming. All you care about is money." I was in tears. "No, young lady, I'm rich, but I don't owe you anything." The leader frowned and even called security. I was thrown out of the factory. My mom received a call from my teacher, learning I hadn't gone to school, and came to find me. When she saw this scene, she nearly broke down. We both collapsed in tears at the factory gates. Later, when we still couldn't raise the money, my mom sold the house and anything valuable, but it was useless. My dad missed the best treatment window, and even if we used all our money, it would only keep him alive for a little longer. During that winter break of my second year, my dad took his last breath. That winter break, my mom and I started a lawsuit against the factory. My dad knew the projects he had worked on, and I clearly remembered the bonus amount he had told us about, but in the end, it was halved. However, when Sam stood in court, he brought out the account books, and there wasn't a single mistake. Plus, their lawyer was very strong, and the court finally ruled that we lost. We had nothing left. My mom bore the weight of supporting the family, but the pressures of life and the grief of losing my dad soon crushed her. Her physical ailments worsened, her mental state deteriorated, and she often had headaches. My life sank into darkness, with no light in sight. That's when Rockey appeared. Rockey transferred in at the start of our senior year. He was handsome, smart, and had an extraordinary presence. He looked like one of those kids born in Rome. But he was always cold, keeping people at a distance. No one dared approach him, except Tony. Not long after, the two became close, best buddies. Serena, who was in the class next door, was very familiar with Tony. After Rockey transferred in, she came to see Tony more often. The students started gossiping, saying Serena had a crush on Rockey, but Rockey remained indifferent to her. Even at the cafeteria, he only spoke to Tony. At that time, I was consumed by pain and my studies, so I didn't have much interaction with Rockey. Then one day, a classmate suddenly stood up and loudly asked, "Hailey, did your mom start sweeping the streets?" Everyone turned to look at me. I still remember how it felt, my face burning with the heat of mockery and derision from all directions. Then another classmate said, "Hailey's dad died, right? So pitiful. Her mom had to sweep the streets to make money. Hailey, can you still afford school? College will cost even more." Though there were only 30 students in the class, it felt as though a sea of voices came crashing toward me, drowning me. I kept my head down, tears welling up in my eyes. When the bell rang for dismissal, I didn't move, sitting in the classroom until everyone had left. It was silent. Then suddenly, a box of strawberry milk appeared before me. Looking up, Rocky's handsome face came into view. He held another box of strawberry milk in his hand, the straw between his lips. "This is for you." It had been a week since Rockey transferred in. This was the first time he spoke to me, the first time he looked at me. Outside, the cold spring was still lingering, and the sunset bathed the earth in warm light. Rockey stood in that warm glow and said, "I'm Rockey, your classmate." My heart skipped a beat. Thank you," I said, lowering my head and pushing the milk toward him. "I don't want it." Then I grabbed my bag and left. I didn't hear any footsteps behind me. He didn't follow. I breathed a sigh of relief. Even when I reached the school gate, my heart was still racing. The next day, I entered the classroom with my head down, but I could still feel the stares on me. My inferiority grew within me. I told myself, I have no dad, we're poor, and my mom has to sweep the streets to support my education. A boy came up to me, grinning, and asked, "Hailey, do you want me to start a fundraiser for you? Girls can donate their old clothes to you." Some students were laughing behind me. I buried my head lower, my face burning. Even my scalp felt hot. The gossip and laughter kept coming. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. The boy in front of me gasped. I looked up. To my surprise, Rockey was holding that boy by the collar, his cold eyes looking down on him. "What's your problem?" The boy turned pale and stammered. I was just talking to Hailey. What's it to you?" Rockey sneered, pulling the boy out of the room. It looked effortless, like he was just dragging some trash. "Wait for me," Tony shouted, running after them. The murmurs started again. "What's Rockey's deal? Are he and Hailey close? I've never seen them talk. Maybe he's just pitying her." Those words were from my best friend. I looked at her, and she quickly averted her gaze. I kept my head down, and bitterness spread through my heart. When the bell for the next class rang, the boy came back. He went straight to his seat, his face battered. Before the first class started, I heard my classmates say Rockey had beaten him up and been sent to the principal's office. Was it for me? Before class, Rockey and Tony came back. The morning passed, and I didn't hear any more discussions about me. At noon, I went to the cafeteria after the other students had left, slowly getting up to go. As I reached the door, I saw Rockey and Tony standing there. I froze in place. Tony smiled and said, "Let's have lunch together from now on, Hailey." I didn't respond, instead looking at Rockey. His expression was somewhat indifferent. "What are you looking at? Let's go." I was still a bit dazed. "I'm hungry. Hurry up." Rockey grabbed my arm. He was tall with long legs, walking fast, and I hurried to keep up, quietly saying, "I can walk by myself." Rockey glanced at me and released my arm. From that day on, Rockey brought me a box of strawberry milk every day. Outside of school, during breaks, Rockey would also contact me. He said his studies weren't as good as mine, so he wanted to buy study materials to catch up and asked me to help him pick them out. Whenever I helped, he'd buy 2 sets, giving me one when we parted ways. He also asked me which university I wanted to go to. I wasn't a fool. I could tell what he meant, but I wasn't sure how long his feelings would last. Suddenly, one day, the head teacher called me and Rockey to the office. The teacher said seriously, "Senior year is the most important stage, and I want you both to focus on your studies." His gaze shifted between me and Rockey, then fixed on me. "Hailey, getting into a good university is your only way out. I don't need to remind you of that, right?" I lowered my head and softly said, "I understand." Because I didn't have a father and my family was poor, I felt like I didn't even have the right to like someone. At that moment, my feelings of inferiority reached their peak. Just as I was about to leave, I heard Rockey say, "Teacher, I like Hailey, and I'm not going to give up. I will keep liking her." After leaving the office, neither of us said anything. Back in class, Rockey moved his desk next to mine and told my desk mate, "Switch with me." My desk mate hesitated, and Rockey smiled. The teacher agreed. Let Hailey and me study together. The teacher didn't stop us, so I ended up sitting with Rockey. He didn't bring up his feelings for me, and I didn't mention them either. A small seed was planted in my heart, and I carefully nurtured it, not letting anyone know. My mood slowly brightened, and even my mom said she saw me smile more. I knew it was because of Rockey. I promised to protect that little seed, waiting until graduation. But I didn't expect Serena to come find me. When it was just the 2 of us, she looked like a high and mighty little princess, adored by everyone. She said, "Hailey, do you like Rockey?" I looked at her, but didn't answer. "Hailey, actually, Rockey's family is very rich, even wealthier than mine," she said calmly, stating the facts. "You and him come from different worlds, and you won't have a future together. I hope you think it through." After she said that, she turned and walked away. I watched her figure, suddenly feeling envious of Serena. I also felt unwilling, shouting after her, "Rocky and I have agreed to get into the same university and I won't give up." Serena paused but didn't look back, continuing to walk forward. I knew she didn't take me seriously, but Rocky was my light and I truly didn't want to give up. Finally, Rocky and I were accepted into our desired university. The 4 years of university were the happiest time of my life, until the year before graduation, when Rocky suggested meeting our parents. After meeting Rocky's parents, I realized that there was really no future for us. That night, I went to find Serena. I said to her, "Give me 100,000 yuan and I'll let Rocky go." Serena looked at me in surprise. In the end, she gave me 100,000 yuan. I took the money and went to Rocky. In his private apartment, I kissed his lips. Afterwards, I got up and told him, "Rocky, let's break up." Rocky smiled, telling me not to joke. I turned and glared at him, his face now repulsive, utterly disgusting. I pulled out the bank card Serena had given me. "I sold you to Serena for 100,000. We're breaking up, after all. I've grown tired of you." Rocky froze for a moment, and then an overwhelming cloud of disbelief appeared on his face. He quickly got out of bed and walked toward me, staring at me intensely. "What do you mean?" His expression made me feel a strange satisfaction. "It means I don't like you. What I like is money. I'll give you as much as you want." Rocky shouted, veins popping on his forehead. "Hailey, what the hell do you want from me? I don't want your money. Every cent of it disgusts me," I said coldly, word by word. "Rocky, I hate you. Looking at your face makes me want to vomit. Don't ever contact me again, and don't ever see me again." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist with such force that it felt like he was going to crush my bones. "Don't touch me." I struggled to break free. "Stop disgusting me." That was the last thing I ever said to Rocky. After that, I never saw him again. My mom and I moved, and I changed all my contact details, completely disappearing from Rocky's life. I fell asleep, lost in memories, and had a nightmare. In the dream, a car was heading straight for Rocky. At the last moment, I woke up suddenly, sitting up, gasping for breath, drenched in cold sweat. I didn't know that Rocky almost died in a car accident while trying to find me. By that time, we had been broken up for a long time. Why was he still looking for me? The sky outside was just beginning to brighten. I took a moment to calm down, then got out of bed and went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. The chill spread slowly through my body. It was only after making breakfast that it was a little past 6. I gently opened Alice's room door. The little one was sleeping soundly, and the cold feeling inside me gradually faded. I kissed Alice's forehead lightly. "Little darling, happy birthday. Time to get up." Alice rolled over and lazily stayed in bed, suddenly remembering it was her birthday. She groggily sat up, rubbing her eyes and asked, "Mom, where's my present?" "I want birthday cake." My heart melted at her cuteness, and I smiled. "Go wash up first, then we'll pick out a cake when the shop opens." She immediately jumped off the bed and hurried to the bathroom. When I gave birth to Alice, it was a difficult labor, and it took 36 hours, spanning 2 days. Fortunately, we were both safe in the end. At breakfast, Alice swung her little legs, eager to go buy the birthday cake. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole and saw Peter. I quickly opened the door. Peter had changed into slippers and was holding a huge gift box, heading straight for Alice. "Sweetheart, look what Daddy brought you." Alice clapped excitedly. "A gift. I want to see." I sighed, pressing my lips together. "How many times have I told you? He's your godfather." "A godfather is still a father," Peter replied, placing the gift box on the coffee table and letting Alice finish eating first. "He was my graduate school classmate. When I found out I was pregnant, I stayed home to study on my own. Whenever I had questions, Peter would come over and help me. We were both studying law. After getting our lawyer's licenses, he opened his own firm and invited me to help him. In just a year, we made the firm look professional, even signing a $3 million contract together. Peter was my benefactor. He helped me a lot. Considering Alice's schooling and other factors, I decided to move back to my registered address. This place was always our home. Peter resolutely moved his firm here too. I didn't agree, but he said, "It's not because of you, don't put too much pressure on yourself." After breakfast, Peter took Alice and me to buy a cake. Just as we stepped out of the building, a tall figure suddenly appeared in front of me, and I froze. Rocky froze too. He stood there, staring at me, then at Alice and Peter. Alice was between Peter and me, tugging on our hands. Rocky didn't blink, his eyes bloodshot, his cold gaze eventually landing on my face. It still burned like fire. It felt like the hand of God dragged us into a battlefield, not even giving us a chance to prepare. Finally, it was Alice who broke the eerie silence. "Daddy, Mommy, let's hurry and get the cake." Her voice was sweet and soft, carrying a natural hint of a child's charm, raised in an environment of happiness. I snapped back to reality, forced a smile, and said, "All right, let's go." Peter gave me a meaningful look. He was so clever. He didn't need to ask anything to understand. He bent down and picked up Alice. "Let's go, my dear." He held Alice securely, with his other hand gently squeezing mine. I walked stiffly beside Peter, walking past Rockey, further and further away under his unblinking gaze. It felt as though some invisible force was pulling me, and I couldn't resist the urge to look back. "Don't look back," Peter softly reminded me. He knew some of my story, though not all of it. I didn't even know how I ended up in Peter's car, but after we had driven for a while, my foggy mind began to clear. Peter glanced at me and asked, "Are you all right?" I shook my head, smiled faintly. "I'm fine." After buying the cake, Peter and I took Alice to kindergarten. The teacher took the cake and led Alice inside. Once Alice was out of sight, Peter turned to me. He didn't start the engine immediately but asked, "Is that person Alice's father?" Although it was a question, his tone was certain. Getting pregnant was an unexpected event for me. I was still young back then and didn't understand these things. I thought it was just stress after the breakup, causing my period to be delayed. By the time I found out I was pregnant, I was already showing. When my mom found out, she took care of me meticulously. In the end, we couldn't bear to give up on the child who had already formed, so we decided to keep him. Focusing on this child helped my mom's mental state improve. It seemed like this child became her emotional anchor. But none of this had anything to do with Rockey. Alice was my child, only mine. Peter drove us to the firm. On the way, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Serena. "Let's meet, Hailey, since you've decided to come back." Yes, since I was back, I had to face what was ahead. Address? Peter dropped me off and said before I got out of the car, "I'll wait for you here." "No need, I'll come back after the meeting. It's not worth delaying important matters for this." The firm had just moved, and there was a lot to do. Peter looked at me silently for a moment and nodded. He drove off, and I went into the cafe where I had arranged to meet Serena. Serena smiled when she saw me, always so calm and composed. "I've ordered coffee for you." I sat down. "Thanks." She paused for a few seconds, then said, "Hailey, I won't beat around the bush. Here." She took out a bank card and placed it on the table, pushing it toward me. It was the same gesture she made when she gave me money before. I laughed lightly. Her expression turned serious. "This is 10 million. Quit your hotel job and do something else." She continued, "Even if you do nothing, this 10 million will be enough for you to live on for the rest of your life." I looked at the beautiful face in front of me and sneered, "Serena, you're still the same as 5 years ago." Serena paused for a moment, her pupils shifting a few times. "Some things can't be bought with money. If he likes you, he likes you. If he doesn't, no matter how much money you spend, he still won't like you. I didn't even look at the bank card. I paid you back that 100,000, not to leave myself a way out. I never thought about getting back with Rockey. As for you, after 5 years, is this still the only way you can keep him?" Serena's calm expression finally broke, her eyes filled with resentment like poisoned arrows. I stood up. "Stop looking for me. I'm not interested in your affairs." With that, I turned and left. Back then, when I asked her for that 100,000, it was only to make Rockey completely give up. I knew that even if I returned that 100,000, Serena would never tell Rockey the truth. Outside, the weather remained gloomy, as if brewing a heavy rain. Back at the office, Peter told me some news. Boss Sam's secretary got caught for tax evasion, and he burned the fake ledger. I couldn't help but laugh coldly. "How much did Boss Sam give him?" Peter said, "Guaranteed wealth for his family for life." I clenched my fists, the hatred inside me spreading like the dark sky. The heavy rain fell after nightfall. It was already past 9, and Alice was still excited about her birthday, refusing to go to bed. Peter had left before the heavy rain began. I put on a serious expression. "You can't stay up late, it'll stop you from growing. Go to sleep." Alice pouted her little belly. "But today's my birthday, I should be the one to decide." Suddenly, my phone rang. Another unknown number. My heart skipped a beat. I had a bad feeling. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. The sound of rain came through the phone, followed by Rocky's mumbled voice. "Hailey, Hailey." He didn't say anything else, just repeated my name, his voice unclear, as if he were drunk. I tightened my grip on the phone. "Hailey, come downstairs, please. I have something to ask you. Come down." His voice was blurred by the rain, but I could still hear the pleading and unwillingness. "Come down. Say it clearly. Why did you do this to me?" Hailey, I hate you, damn, come down. I hung up the phone. Hailey. Rocky's voice came from downstairs. I lived on the second floor, and he was standing under the kitchen window, calling my name incessantly. This crazy guy. Worried that my mom might hear, I immediately opened the door and went downstairs. At the entrance of the building, I saw Rocky standing in the heavy rain, his head tilted back, still shouting my name over and over. Rocky. He saw me, froze, then staggered over. His face was pale, his eyes red. Even though he was drenched from the rain, the smell of alcohol still pierced my nose. You came out. He stared at me and suddenly smiled, a sad smile. Hailey, you're married. I didn't answer his question. He swayed and took another step closer. You're not married, are you? That child, the child. Isn't it mine? His voice trembled as he stared at me. I looked at him coldly. No. Pain flashed in Rocky's eyes. He still wouldn't give up, continuing to question me. You're lying to me, Hailey. You're lying, aren't you? I saw the pain, longing, and even begging in his eyes. He was waiting for an answer, the answer he wanted. I'm not lying to you, Rocky. That child isn't yours. I met his pain-filled gaze. You heard it too. My daughter calls my husband a daddy. How could she be your child? Rocky fell silent. For a long time, his eyes became empty. Suddenly, he exploded, gripping my shoulders tightly. Why did you do this to me, Hailey? Why? What did I do wrong? Tell me, tell me. I pushed him away. The force wasn't strong, but Rocky lost his balance and staggered backward, falling to the ground in a mess, just like when I had broken up with him. But now, I no longer felt the satisfaction I once did. Don't come find me again. I don't want to see you, I said and quickly rushed inside, slamming the door. Rocky kept pounding on the door from outside. Hailey, don't go. Let's talk this through. Hailey. Rocky sneered. I also want to ask you, Hailey, why did you lie to me, saying you're married when you're not? I narrowed my eyes. Did you investigate me? I just want to know the truth. Rocky's voice turned cold. Is Alice really my child? Her birthday. That day was Alice's father's birthday. I interrupted him hurriedly. It wasn't until I said it that I realized how guilty I sounded. I frowned impatiently. Leave here now. I told you I don't want to see you. Why are you so unfair to me? Rocky's voice was low, as if coming from underground. Hailey, what did I do wrong? Why did you do this to me? I bit my lip, every nerve on edge. You're engaged to Serena, and you're asking me these questions. What's the point? The engagement is fake. Rocky interrupted me. It's just a formality between families. After the collaboration ends, we'll break it off. He stepped closer, almost forcing me into a corner. For the past 5 years, I haven't been with anyone else. He spoke with cold firmness. Now, can you finally tell me why you did this to me? I took a deep breath, no longer affected by his burning gaze, and calmed down. Rocky, if you want to know the truth, go ask your dad at home. Don't bother me anymore. Rocky left. The tension in my body snapped at that moment. I leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Before graduation, Rocky called me. Hailey, I'll come to your house tomorrow. By then, my mom and I had already moved out of the old house and were living in a small rental. Okay. I gave Rocky the address. The next morning at 9 a.m., I got another call from him. I'm waiting for you at the alley entrance. I was wearing an old but clean white dress. Rocky stood at the entrance of the alley in a black pair of pants and a white t-shirt, smiling as he reached out his hand to me. I ran over and took his hand, unable to stop my smile. Rocky held my other hand, lowering his eyes to meet mine. I was almost floating with happiness. I knew my dad was watching from heaven and would be happy for me. Rocky said that the moment he saw me, he liked me. From high school to college graduation, he had always been faithful. Rocky's ears turned red as he looked at me for a while, his voice softening. Hailey, I told my parents about us, and they're so happy for me. They want to meet you. I was stunned. He quickly added, they're open-minded. As long as I like you, they'll like you. I just want to make things official with you. Of course, if you don't want to, I do. I interrupted him with a smile. I really want to. The next day, Rocky took me to his home. When the luxurious villa, which I had only seen on TV, came into view, everything felt like a dream. Suddenly, I remembered what Serena had said to me. She told me that Rocky and I weren't from the same world. Indeed, before I even had time to feel inferior, Rocky had already pulled me in. Walking through the large yard, I saw two people standing at the entrance of the villa from a distance. Rocky's parents. I froze, my body stiffening. Rocky turned to look at me. What's wrong? I stared at Rocky's father, my mind going blank. The face in front of me slowly merged with the one from a year ago. The man who had looked down on me with disdain and refused to give my father the full bonus. My insides started shaking. That leader was Rocky's father. The man who had caused my father to miss the best chance for treatment was Rocky's father. Rocky's father had a kind smile, warmly inviting me inside. Rockey was right. His parents were very open-minded and didn't care about family background. At that moment, he seemed so kind, but he didn't even remember me. I had begged him, but he chose to trust Boss Sam, coldly rejecting me. He even thought I was just using my father's illness to extort money from him. He didn't remember me. At that moment, I almost fell apart in despair. The day after Rockey came to see me, he broke off his engagement with Serena. I received his call. "We have nothing to talk about," I asked my dad. He sounded a bit anxious, as if afraid I might hang up. "Before I brought you home, my dad had never met you. Hailey, why didn't you just tell me?"
Yeah.
I shouldn't have made him go back to ask his dad. For years ago, his dad didn't remember me, so how could he suddenly recall me now? "Rockey, I don't want to hear your voice again. Don't ever come to disgust me," I said coldly before hanging up and blocking his number. Peter came to find me and told me directly, "Reporting won't help, so Hailey, be prepared for the worst." It was Sam Boss whom I reported, but he shifted all the blame to his secretary. And I had no evidence for the past incident. Unless they did an internal investigation, I had no way of getting revenge. Peter gently patted my shoulder. "Maybe there's another way." I met his gaze. "Another way? The other way is?" I lowered my head, murmuring, "I go to find Rocky's father and have him investigate, then what?" Peter's eyes filled with sympathy. "Hailey, you're pushing yourself too hard." I raised my hand to cover my face, sobbing. My dad had hope. It's them. Peter, I hate them. I hate them so much." At about 5 o'clock, Peter and I left the office. "Hailey." I turned towards the voice. Rockey stood not far away, looking coldly at me and Peter. He walked over and said to Peter, "I need to talk to Hailey." Peter raised his hand and wrapped it around me. "Hailey is my girlfriend. Her business is my business. Just speak your mind." Rocky's face darkened, his eyes flashing with coldness, staring intensely at Peter's hand on my shoulder. He clenched his fist and struck Peter's face. Peter didn't have time to dodge, and his face swelled up from the punch. The tension between the two men escalated quickly, with tension in the air. "Enough," I yelled, eyes closed. Rockey and Peter stopped, glaring at each other. "Rockey, if you're done, leave. Otherwise, I'll call the police and accuse you of intentional harm." Just then, my phone rang, interrupting me. "Go away." I turned my attention away from Rockey and answered the call. What was said on the other end made my mind go blank, but the next second, I realized what was happening and began shaking. "I'll be right there." Peter immediately pulled me into his arms. "What's wrong?" My mom and Alice were in a car accident. They're in the hospital. My mom and Alice were in the emergency room. A nurse came to ask for family members. "The child needs a blood transfusion. B-type. Do you have B-type blood?" "Doctor, I have B-type blood." Rockey rolled up his sleeve. "Take mine." "Don't." I suddenly thought of something and stopped Rockey. Rockey furrowed his brow. "What's the matter?" "That's your daughter." "Doctor, don't take his blood. Isn't there enough in the blood bank?" I asked, trembling. The nurse glanced at me without speaking and quickly walked away. After more than 3 hours of emergency treatment, my mom and Alice were out of danger. My mom was severely injured. When the car hit them, she tightly protected Alice. Peter gently patted my back. "It's okay, Aunt Chu and Alice are fine now." I nodded, but my tears wouldn't stop. The police came to ask me to identify someone. They said the car had directly targeted my mom and Alice, with no sign of braking. After hitting them, the car fled and is now being hunted. It was a man. I shook my head. "I don't know him." The police asked, "Have you offended anyone recently?" "Think carefully. You're a lawyer. Is it possible that one of your clients is dissatisfied with your defense, or that someone is seeking revenge on you?" I thought carefully, but couldn't figure it out. I've only taken salary dispute cases recently, but none of them have gone to trial yet, and I just came back. Rockey looked at the photo and said, "Don't worry, I'll find this person." I didn't say anything. The next morning, my mom and Alice both woke up. I told Peter, "I'll stay in the hospital, you can go back. Call me if you need anything," Peter instructed, saying goodbye to my mom and Alice before leaving. I saw him off. When I returned to the ward, I found Rockey sitting beside Alice's bed. Alice had been crying when she woke up, but now she was smiling. "Uncle, you're so amazing." I rushed over. "Rockey, what are you doing here? Who told you to come?" Alice frowned. Mom, why are you being so mean to Uncle Rocky? He showed me a magic trick. It was so amazing. Rocky didn't look at me, but spoke to Alice. Be good. I'll step out for a bit and come back to keep you company, okay? Alice obediently replied, okay, Uncle Rocky, I'll wait for you. Come back quickly. Rocky then stood up and walked out, pausing by me. I need to talk to you. Alice urged, Mom, go quickly. I felt a moment of panic, but told myself to stay calm and followed Rocky outside. He got straight to the point, his tone firm. Alice is my daughter. I instinctively wanted to deny it, but Rocky didn't give me a chance to speak. I'm also type B blood, just like Alice. You wouldn't let me give her a transfusion because we're direct relatives. I am Alice's biological father. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. I'll confirm it myself. The truth was revealed just like that. How dare he? So what? As long as I won't let go, you can forget about taking Alice away from me. I'm not trying to take Alice away. Rocky pulled back his hand. His gaze towards me was complex, but always filled with affection. 3 days later, with Rocky's help, the man who hit my mom and Alice with his car was found. From him, I learned a shocking truth. It was Serena who had ordered him to do it, and she gave him a large sum of money. Soon, Serena was detained. I went to the police station to meet her. Serena, who usually carried herself like a noble princess, now appeared crazy and cold. Why did Rocky stop wanting me the moment you came back? It's always been the same. He was with me, but after you joined, his eyes were only on you. I liked him so much. I have more money than you, and I'm more suited for him. Why is it that he only revolves around you? Rocky is such a proud person, but after you left, he completely changed. He drank every day, crying, begging you to come back. He even drank himself into the hospital with stomach bleeding. I took care of him day and night. Then someone said they saw someone who looked like you on the road. He didn't care about anything and crazily went to look for you. He got into a car accident, and it was still me who took care of him day and night. Where were you at that time? When Rocky was at his lowest, it was me who stayed with him. Why is it that when you show up, he just drops me? You clearly hurt him so badly, but he still loves you. Hailey, how can you take advantage of Rocky's love and trample on him? Trample on me. I just want you to lose the one you love most and feel the pain of almost losing them. Serena was really going crazy. She suddenly burst into laughter. You want me dead, huh? Not possible, Hailey. You're just a servant. Do you believe that if my dad lifts a finger, you won't even find a lawyer to represent you? I don't need to find a lawyer. I looked her in the eye and said, word by word, I am a lawyer. Although I had been working on civil cases this year, I was confident in criminal cases as well. Serena froze. What did you say? Just wait for your prison sentence, Serena, because Rocky won't let you go either. I stood up. I hung up the phone and turned to leave. Serena's voice faded away. These days, Rocky did almost nothing, spending 24 hours a day in the hospital with Alice. As I saw Alice growing closer to him, my worries deepened. But Rocky retorted with his position, I'm Alice's biological father. You have no right to kick me out. When I was about to get angry, he added, and I'm staying, not just because of Alice. His affectionate gaze took my breath away, and the next second, an overwhelming sense of disgust surged through me. I nodded, fine, Rocky. Didn't you always want to know why I rejected you back then? Call your dad. Rocky's expression froze. My dad? He called his dad, and soon, Rocky's father arrived, along with Rocky's mother. They knew about Alice's existence and were eager to meet her, but I stopped them at the door. Rocky's father's face showed slight anger. Hailey, you have no right to stop me from seeing my granddaughter. You're the one who harmed Rocky so much and hid our granddaughter for so many years. How could you be so cruel? Rocky's mother's eyes were filled with tears. What did our family ever do to wrong you? I looked coldly at Rocky's father. Don't you remember me? Rocky's father snorted. Stop talking nonsense. I want to see my granddaughter. 6 years ago, when you went to inspect a factory on the outskirts, a 17-year-old girl cried and begged you. She urgently needed her father's bonus because her father needed a large sum of money for medical treatment. When I said this, Rocky's father's expression showed that he remembered. He looked at me in disbelief. It's you. My insides trembled, but I forced myself to speak steadily and coldly. I wouldn't show him my vulnerable side. That money was owed to my dad, but you thought I was just a poor child trying to use my father's illness to extort money from you. You had the security guards throw me out. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling again, because we didn't have enough money. My dad missed the best treatment window and left us, me and my mom. At that moment, I turned to look at Rocky. His face had gone completely pale, standing frozen in place. His eyes fixed on me, as if he had lost contact with the world. The classmates mocked me, and you stood up to protect me. Rocky, do you think I should thank you? Rockey was struck by the truth. I then looked at Rockey's father. It was you who allowed your subordinate, Boss Sam, to exploit his employees, falsify accounts, and destroy a family. You tell me, what right do you have to see my daughter? Rockey's father's legs buckled, and he had to lean against the wall to stay upright. He couldn't look me in the eye anymore, his hands trembling as he pulled out his phone. Get Boss Sam here, immediately. The final result was that Rockey's father took matters into his own hands, finding Boss Sam's secretary. The secretary recanted in prison and testified against Boss Sam. After a thorough investigation, Boss Sam was charged with multiple offenses and would soon face trial. During this time, I hadn't seen Rockey. The day my mom and Alice were discharged from the hospital, Rockey's parents came. Rockey's father immediately knelt in front of my mom and me. This was the first time I saw him after the incident with Boss Sam. He had aged a lot since the last time. Hailey, I'm sorry. I apologize to you both. Rockey's mother cried uncontrollably. Hailey, we really know we were wrong, but you can't stop us from seeing Alice. No matter what, she's our granddaughter. She came over and grabbed my arm, pleading, will you go see Rockey? Will you go see him? I'm really afraid something's happened to him. He's been locked up in his house for a week. Hailey, please save him. I went to Rockey's house, and it was Tony who opened the door for me. When he saw me, his expression brightened, and he immediately pulled me inside. Hurry, don't let him drink anymore. The room was thick with the smell of alcohol. Tony led me to the back of the sofa. Rockey was sitting on the floor, leaning against the back of the sofa, surrounded by bottles of alcohol scattered everywhere. His eyes were empty, his vacant gaze staring off into space. He looked more destitute than a beggar under a bridge. He was slow to react, not noticing my presence, and slowly raised the bottle in his hand. Tony snatched the bottle away. Give it back. Rockey's voice was hoarse. When he turned and saw me, he froze. It was as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He stared at me for a long time before trying to push himself up. His legs gave way, and he collapsed back down. Hailey. He tried several times, finally standing up, looking lost like a child who couldn't find his way home. You came. Tears suddenly fell from his eyes. Tony said, after you left, he couldn't find you and became like this. Hailey, you. Go out. I stared at Rockey, speaking to Tony. Tony silently left the room. I grabbed Rockey and led him to the bathroom. Take a shower. I'll take you to the hospital. I turned to leave. Behind me, I heard a thud. My body stiffened. Rockey's apology came in an endless stream. I fought hard to stop the tears from rising in my eyes and turned around. Rockey, you don't have to do this. I don't need your apology or guilt because my dad isn't coming back. It was as if he hadn't heard what I said. He just kept repeating those 3 words. Sorry. I squatted down and took hold of his shoulders. Rockey, I hated you, resented you, but I know you didn't do anything wrong. I just transferred my hatred for your dad onto you. But you really didn't do anything wrong. You didn't even know anything. Rockey, it's all over. We both need to move forward. The heat in my throat made it feel like I had just swallowed a burning iron. We'll be okay. Rockey held me tightly, his face buried in my shoulder. I could feel my clothes getting soaked with his tears. That day, Rockey didn't know how long he cried. Later, he obediently listened to me. He washed up, changed into clean clothes, and went with me to the hospital. The doctor told him that his stomach could no longer handle alcohol. He promised the doctor that he would never drink again. After leaving the hospital, Rockey suddenly stopped me. He said, Hailey, don't worry, I won't do anything foolish again. He added, I'll keep my life to atone. Tony was waiting for him by the side. Peter came to pick me up. On the way back, I sat in Peter's car, tears flowing uncontrollably as if a dam had broken. Peter didn't try to comfort me, because no one could understand how I felt. I would never forget that in the darkest year of my life, Rockey, that boy, brought light into my life. After Peter dropped me off at home, he was about to leave. Alice wouldn't let him. Daddy, will you stay with me tonight? Peter squatted down in front of Alice, his voice full of warmth, always so gentle. Be good, I'm your godfather. This title, which he had always hated, he now voluntarily brought up. Alice looked a little upset. Why can other kids live with their mom and dad, but I can only live with mom? I want daddy to stay with me every day. Peter gently patted Alice's little head. Godfather is very busy right now. He's still left. Alice was so sad that tears welled up in her eyes. I went downstairs to send Peter off. He asked me, aren't you going to tell Alice the truth? I felt confused, like there was a tangled mess inside me. I haven't decided yet. By the way, I want you to take charge of the firm here, Peter suddenly said. I froze. He smiled, his face lit by the streetlight, looking so lighthearted and relieved. I just feel like I'm not good enough, and I want to keep studying. Watching this man get in his car and drive away, I stood there, not able to pull my gaze away for a long time. Peter was my benefactor, but there wasn't much I could do to repay him. So little. The day Peter left, I took Alice to the airport to send him off. Alice cried like a little puddle of tears, tightly holding on to Peter, unwilling to let go. I don't want to be apart from Daddy. I want to be with Daddy forever. Peter's eyes were red too, but he still managed to keep smiling. Alice, Godfather has to board the plane, we're going to be late. He gently pried Alice's little hands away, said, "Goodbye," and turned to leave. Alice threw herself into my arms. Mom, I want Daddy. I picked Alice up. You still have me. Mommy will always be with you. I was the adult. I should have been stronger than Alice. But in the end, I too couldn't hold back my tears. Holding Alice, I turned around. In the crowd, that tall figure stood out, and I spotted him at once. It was Rockey. "What are you doing here?" I walked over, still holding Alice. Rockey reached out his hand, cautiously looking at me. When he saw that I said nothing, he took Alice from me. "I thought you were going to leave," he said. He no longer had the same glow about him, his whole demeanor was bleak. I shook my head and explained, "It's Peter." Alice was still crying in Rocky's arms, calling for her dad. The pain in Rocky's expression resonated with the pain in my heart. After we got into Rocky's car, I received a message from Peter. "Hailey, don't run from your heart, and don't be so hard on yourself." I knew he had seen right through me, which is why he chose to leave my life. I don't think I will ever be able to repay this man in my lifetime. Rockey took Alice and me home and was ready to leave. He didn't even have the courage to stay a little longer, afraid that I might be upset. I ran after him. "Rockey, I don't need you to atone for anything. It's not your fault." Rockey looked at me for a long time, then suddenly asked, "Do you love him?" It took me a moment to realize he was talking about Peter. Peter and I are very good friends. This wasn't an explanation, but more of me not wanting anyone to misunderstand the bond between Peter and me. "Hailey." Rocky's voice was hoarse, his eyes red. "I went to the place where you were studying for your graduate degree. His voice choked. "I couldn't find you. I searched the school for a week and still couldn't find you. I was pregnant with Alice at that time, so I stayed home studying." Rockey nodded. He lowered his head for a moment, then exhaled, looked up, and smiled faintly. "I'm leaving now. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. I'll be there." It was like he was afraid I would refuse. He didn't wait for me to speak and turned to walk away. A few days later, Rocky's parents found me. Rocky's father said, "I've decided to leave all my assets to Alice." Rocky's mother pleaded with me, tears in her eyes. "Please don't reject us. We just want to be good to Alice. We won't take her away from you." I looked at the elderly couple before me. In less than a month, they had lost all the vitality they once had. It turned out, they were just ordinary people. The first trial verdict came down. Boss Sam was sentenced to 6 years and 7 months in prison, and he insisted on appealing. But I wouldn't let the final result change. 6 years and 7 months of imprisonment was far too light compared to my father's death. After leaving the court, I saw Rocky's parents. They were standing at the foot of the stairs. The golden sunlight was like rice ears. I sighed deeply, closed my eyes, and felt warmth on my cheeks. Let it all end here. Let all the past be left behind here. Serena's verdict was also delivered. Just like with Boss Sam's case, I personally went to court. Serena's sentence was much more severe, 10 years and 3 months in prison. She, of course, would also appeal. But now, Serena's family could no longer manage her. It wasn't because they didn't want to, but because her parents were also embroiled in lawsuits. Serena's scandal had naturally caused a huge impact on the company. Added to that, the withdrawal of investments from Rocky's family and their behind-the-scenes maneuvers. The entire Serena family was like a collapsing building, no longer the powerful family they once were. My mom told me, "The bad people have been punished. Hailey, you should look forward now." I understood what my mom meant and nodded. The following year, on Alice's birthday, I took my mom and Alice to a restaurant for dinner. As we walked out, Alice's excited little voice rang out, "Mom, look, it's the handsome uncle." I looked over. Rockey was standing not far away, bathed in the afterglow, dressed in warm colors. He was like the first time he stood before me, saying, "I'm Rockey, your classmate." He held a pink gift box in his hands, walked up to Alice, bent down, and presented the box to her as if it were a treasure. "Happy birthday, Alice." The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.